to introduce our fourth and final intellectual salon here in the library for the spring semester. We're going to continue in the fall with the same theme, time. So if you haven't been with us before, but you'd like to hear what the other topics were about, you can find them on Sierra College's website, iTunes U, past lectures, and you'll be able to go for these intellectual salons and learn all these different ways to examine the concept of time. Or is there a concept, or is there time? So we're really having a lot of fun. We're going to do it, continue it in the fall semester as well, with things like measuring time, the philosophy of time, time as viewed by different cultures. And we're going to look at things like the time of a bacterium and the time of a bristlecone pine and the time of the dinosaurs and all different aspects of time. We're having great fun. This is a consortium effort between associated students of Sierra College, the Sierra College Library, and our Dean of Library Services, Sabrina Pape, is here today. Friends of the Library and the Director of the Friends of the Library, Dr. David Dixon here, and and I'm the editor of Sierra College Press, Joe Medeiros, and I'm happy to have you all here. So I want to get started right away. I'm going to make some introductions. We have three musicians today. We're going to look at time and music like it makes a difference, right? All I could think of was that Steve Martin movie. I think it was called The Jerk, where he
Best example.
Yes.
the best example ever given. I'm glad that you hear it. Our provocateurs today include Greg McLaughlin here, who came to Sierra College in 1991. He's a professor of music here. He teaches the jazz history, music theory, like only the fundamentals.
That's
right?
all I know.
Can't get past that. Jazz improvisation, or improv, if you're into it. And this one was very interesting. He teaches music business. And so that's it, I guess, if you want to make a living in music, right? So,
Well, that's another story. That's a whole other story.
he's the lead and the instructor for the Sierra College Jazz Ensemble, the Wind Ensemble, the Wind Symphony, and the award-winning Sierra College Jazz Voices. He and his wife own McLaughlin Studios in Loomis. He also has a theater company. He also likes to work freelance as well. He works with the Sacramento Master Singers Orchestra. He's a flautist among many, many other things. And the Camellia Symphony Orchestra of Swing City. He works with our very own Christine and Rob Bonner. And also the Ecuadorian flamenco guitarist Ivan Nahara as well. So you've always been one of my heroes, Greg. I'm so glad that you're here. Sarah McQueen is a recent addition to the Sierra College faculty, and we're tickled pink to have her here. She's the Director of Vocal Studies and a Professor of Music here at Sierra College. She teaches chamber choir, concert choir, vocal jazz ensemble, music theory, voice, ear training, piano and music history, and fine-tuning your carburetor for Porsche 356.
How'd you know?
They're both college master's degrees from Sacramento State University in Sacramento, and Sarah has worked closely with jazz singers, which is got the Downbeat Award at Sac State. She's performed. It goes on and on. She's performed just about everywhere. Last year, she received from the Associated Students Faculty of the Year. So she is an up-and-coming, rising, brilliant star here at Sierra College. Yeah. And last but not least, Caden Hurst. Caden Hurst is a student here.
Yeah.
And Caden doesn't know it, but he is failing all of his courses here at Sierra, so that he cannot transfer because they want him to stay here forever.
Get that on tape. Got it.
So with that, I welcome you. If you are a faculty member and you're looking for Flex sign up, you know what that means. It's right over here. And we will have this up on the Sierra Club website within a week or something like that, if that's hopefully correct, Chris. And you can see all the other salons as well. We're tickled pink to do this. And written, that's kind of a dorky thing to say. It's a great pleasure to do these salons, intellectual salons, and it's a real pleasure to think about doing them again next fall as well. So welcome, Greg and Sarah and Hayden.
Joe, we really prefer the term nerd in the music building. Hey, it's great to be here, and Joe, thank you very much for inviting us to come out and talk and play some music. First of all, this is a jazz talk. This is a talk by jazz musicians about music, about time in music, about space, but it's important that you keep in mind that we are jazz musicians, and in that spirit, this talk will have a degree of one of the fundamental aspects of what jazz is, or what jazz has, I suppose to be better, which is improvisation. Improvisation is the willingness to walk into a situation and just wing it, you know. But being able to embrace the unknown, to be fearless, to embrace a new environment. Speaking of a new environment, when I was younger, my mom used to scold me for walking into libraries and whistling and making noise. And she, would slap me, and say, shh, shh. But, so I can't tell you how I've been thinking about this whole presentation for several months, and every time I think about it, I just get kind of giddy in a little boy kind of way, because we get to come in here, 2 weeks before finals, no less, and disturb people. And that's really kind of our job as professors, as musicians, and professors. We are provocateurs. I really like that word. Our job as college professors is to challenge people, to challenge your perceptions, to sort of be the I don't know, fly in the ointment or something,
Guess we're pretty good at it.
Yeah, and I think we're pretty good at that. I wrote some things that I probably more. No, I'm just kidding. Let's see. How can we walk into a room and play music with confidence? I mean, this is a really kind of a scary thing when you come right down to it. If you've ever spoken in front of people, if you're prepared, you're at a meeting and you're asked to comment or something. I mean, there's this kind of moment where you're kind of, it can be a little unraveling. And as performers, the thing about jazz players is that we're not afraid to take the chances. We trust the people that we're with, this environment, these musicians. Okay, so no matter what happens, when you go see a jazz group, understand that these folks are doing a great deal of leaning on each other, communicating with each other, reaching out to the audience, but being a core of players that trust each other. Okay, which you're going to see in here in just a moment when we start playing. It's really kind of trusting. You're trusting these people with your lives, with your reputation, and which is a real powerful kind of thing. So our job today is to talk a little bit about music, talk about how musicians deal with the concept of time in playing, and hopefully tweak your perception of what music is, and hopefully maybe even create a little magic, which is part of the deal too. So let's play some.
Yes.
Because I'm dying to make
Noise.
noise. So Sarah, what are we going to do?
Oh, it's Nature Boy.
Okay, Nature Boy. A song called Nature Boy. Ever heard it? You're gonna. First couple bars. By the way, already we're communicating with each other here. Okay, how are we going to do this? It's not that we're not prepared, but it's a standard sort of. Let's do the first couple bars and we'll vamp, and then and hopefully before people leave. Okay, come on.
Oh, count it right. 1, 2. Oh, 1, 2, 3. There was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy. They say he traveled very far, over land and sea. A little shy and sad-eyed, but very wise was he. And then one day, one magic day, he passed my way. And as we spoke of many things, fools and kings, this he said to me: the greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. Say he wandered very far, over land and sea. A little shy and sad of eye, but very wise was he. And then one day, one magic day, he passed my way. And as we spoke of many things, fools and kings, this he said to me: the greatest thing you'll
so, that was really good.
Okay,
Can I
nice
say
solo.
that? Yeah.
Score
We're
some
really
pepper
flunking,
king
man,
solo.
really. Okay, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
you should practice.
We should talk about some basic things, so, so we can, have some tools to actually have a conversation about what you just heard. Because my assumption currently is that, with music, the thing that's powerful about music is that as soon as you start playing, then, the chemistry in the room changes. Okay, we get to tweak you, okay? You're feeling differently now than you were 5 minutes ago, okay? How do I know this? I am. Okay, I feel much different now than I did before we started playing that, and my mood's changed. And there's things that, images that get conjured, or feelings, or memories. Okay, that's the power of music, which is so exciting, which is why we do this, and part of the reason why we do this so much. So, what, in a fundamental way, though, what you're actually hearing are two basic things. You're hearing sound, and then that part in between the sound, which is the silence part. Okay, so you're hearing sound and silence. Okay? So sound in music is represented by the notes that we're playing, okay? And then, or the notes on the page. When you see a piece of music, the black dot with the little flag, that represents a sound. The sound's supposed to be played. In between those notes is where the silence is. Okay, the space in between what we call the note events. Okay, and sometimes they'll in the music you'll be required to even wait, a long time before the next note, and then you'll see something called a rest, which is a little figure, a little box, or a little squiggly, which is where we get to rest up, basically. Okay, that's where the silence is. At that moment in the music, then the player gets to do a couple things. Player gets to consider what he's going to play next, especially when we're improvising. Does everybody know what improvising is? Okay, it is the creation of melody, sort of a spontaneous. It's like improv comedy. Okay, spontaneous. You're reacting to people around you, audience. Okay, so we're creating melodies, spontaneous melodies, hopefully inspired, something beautiful, based on our training and our format and our understanding of the idiom and the timekeeping, which we'll get to. So with the rest, then we can consider what's going to happen next, perhaps, or we can just rest. Our audience gets to rest too, but our audience gets to also maybe consider what it is that we've just done. Okay, to hear the ideas in their own voice. Okay, kind of abstract idea. It gives you a break. Okay, it just gives us a break. And the thing that's compelling about the space in between the note events is that if you wait a moment before you play your next idea, the next idea becomes even more compelling. Okay. If you've ever had a conversation with a dear friend who's awfully excited about something, they just got a new job, like that, and you're at the coffee shop, and they're just talking 100 miles an hour, right? Okay, and it's exciting, and they're so excited. At some point, what happens to you? What happens? Tune out. Yeah, it's too much information. Hold on a second, right? It's like overload. It's like, it's like, what am I trying to say? Children, they get all hyped up when there's too much input.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, sugar or whatever. Yeah, right. Okay, so.
I have a 4-year-old.
So the idea of waiting and placing ideas at a certain time in the music or after the rest is a very powerful thing in music. Okay, and speaking as a jazz musician, this is something that the great improvisers have, people like Lester Young and Miles Davis and others, have mastered. Okay, and it's very powerful. For me, it's more powerful than playing a bunch of notes and kind of showing that technique. Man, it's a great player. Just roll and roll the notes, and it's exciting, and we're all going crazy. But for me, it's play a compelling idea, few measures or just a little bit, and then stop. And then start again. Okay? For me, that's much more compelling. Because when that happens, when I'm watching a performer, I'm completely sucked in. I mean, I'm just, I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff, because I want to know what they're going to say next. How one manipulates time in music and space, when we manipulate the time and space in music, that falls under a category of phrasing, okay? And it can change the meaning of the lyric, or the meaning of the song, the mood of the song, how much playing is being done, how it's being done, where the notes are placed, where the notes are placed within the time, who's keeping the time, are we agreeing on the time, are we not agreeing on the time, is time relative, is time important, all of those kind of things, where we play the notes within the time, all of this has an impact on what the music sounds like, what it feels like, your reaction to it. I think, why don't we let's play Autumn Leaves, and then we can talk about,
Yeah. And when we're talking about time, for us, it's more pocket. We call it the pocket in jazz. If we put the metronome on, you're going to get click, click.
Right here.
Perfect. Click, click, click. This is a very strict idea of time. That means Kate and I, we all have to go clack, 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 clack. So we're going to give you an idea of what that would sound like instead of doing what we just did for you, which is kind of do our thing. Here's what a jazz standard of Autumn Leaves, Johnny Mercer tune. It's like song number 1 we teach in vocal jazz. This is what it would sound like if it was a click. Like that. So let's do. No, because I probably wouldn't stay in time. It's a whole other conversation. The falling leaves drift by my window. The falling leaves of red and gold. I see your lips, the summer kisses, the sunburned hands I used to. You get the idea, right? What do you feel with that? Caden always looks like don't look at him. And did you hear him add a note that he wasn't supposed to, by the way? You're getting too fancy.
Sorry.
Yeah, what do you get?
It's not kind of forced. Like you're having to force yourself to keep.
Yes, that is true.
Like you're naturally don't want to.
Yeah. How many of you listen to music for perfect time?
Good.
Depends on the music.
Yeah, but I mean, I tell this to my students, we talk about this in my classes a lot, but I have singers, because we're all very emotionally connected to what we do. It's vocalists. Not so much these, they're dark souls. We are the light. The thing about that is that when I listen to music, and my students listen to music, we listen to music to feel something, typically. And yes, there are moments where you need to have strict time for the sake of keeping the band together, or, you know, if you classical conductors, there's a reason why there's a conductor, but each conductor does it completely different.
Or accommodating the dancers. How many people dance?
Exactly.
In
Exactly.
public.
So that's the idea. It is rather strict. There's not a lot of freedom for us to interpret anything, let alone the lyric itself. So, and it can be, I mean, it sounds fine, it's fine.
You know, and it's how it's written on the page. We're reading that, playing that exactly like it's printed on the page. But for us as interpreters of music, it feels, like Chelsea said, kind of forced and kind of constricting. And I don't know. I mean, if I heard that, would I want to download that version and listen to that? You know, as a vocalist, to say those lyrics in that way, rhythmically in that time. The falling leaves drift by my window. The falling leaves of red and gold.
That's exactly how it's written.
Kind of kills your dynamics, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly not very fun to perform that way.
like to hear how you would perform it.
Okay,
We will.
thank
We'll
you for
get there.
saying that. Thanks for stepping in that for us. So now, why don't we, let's try it again. And we'll let Sarah play with the note placement a little bit, so that it's not so strict in time. And maybe a little closer to how you might say it, perhaps, okay? And let's still stay pretty strict. My cup.
The falling leaves drift by my window. The falling leaves of red and gold. I see your lips, the summer kisses, the sunburned hands I used to hold. Since you went away, the days grow long, and soon I'll hear the winter song. But I miss you most of all, my darling. When autumn leaves start to fall.
Very kind. So by your applause, then we'll read that as you like that version more. Okay. I don't know, I don't think that's good enough. No offense. Did it change the mood? Reach
Yes. Yes.
Did you notice though, which was really
Yes.
fascinating, is that I'm doing my thing and they're doing their thing.
I heard the actual transition in the beginning, it happened like 3 times.
Ooh,
And then the
ooh.
3rd time it kind of flowed together, and then I heard it was quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's because I'm doing my thing and they're doing their thing. And they're playing one set of time and I'm doing another set of time.
Mhm.
And you can feel the tension and the conflict in it, for sure. That was fun.
Can we do that, just a little bit of that one more time? And can you direct your attention less at this brilliant singing that Sarah's doing and more on what the piano player and the bass player do, just for a moment?
Did you actually back up so they could see each other, or did I just imagine?
Probably because instinctively I felt that they weren't
Yeah,
together.
I thought that when
So,
that happened.
Good.
Yeah.
That's right.
Instinctively that's my
I thought it was
movement.
like a really good visual of that,
Yeah.
so I thought,
Yeah.
like, this was it.
Did you hear what I told Caden when we started? You might not have heard me, but I said, what'd I say? Simplify it or something like that, right?
Do less.
Yeah, don't be too
Yeah.
fancy.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so don't be too fancy. So can we try this one more time? And,
The falling leaves drift by my window. The falling leaves of red and gold. I see your lips, the summer kisses, the summer hands I used to hold. It's a delight to sing over that. You tell.
okay, so how was that? Tell me about the piano player on that one. Go ahead, I can take it.
No dynamics.
No dynamic. What else?
Very musical.
What's that?
Didn't sound very musical.
Ouch! No, you're right. Yeah, not very musical. Why? Why is that not very musical? What do you think? By the way, there are no wrong answers, even though you're being recorded. Okay? No wrong, no. Go ahead.
Is it because you're kind of dictating it, kind of bullying
Yes.
everybody else?
Boy,
by-
oh, that's a great word right there. I was bullying. Yeah, I was sort of dictating the time, and it's all about me, everybody, you know? And I know these chords. That one, but, so, The question, my next question is, am I keeping time?
Yes.
Okay, am I keeping good time? I'm not talking musical, we're not talking about, the feeling, because there ain't none of that yet, right, not really, but am I keeping good time?
Yeah.
Okay, so anybody, we have to have that, okay. So, that's great. I have to be able to do that, but what's missing is what you brought up, which is the musicality of it, right? So how can I be more musical? Besides, don't do that. Go ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are we, I missed the very beginning of this, but are we talking about, because when you said time, obviously we're talking about time in terms of exactly how it's written and like what a metronome would be telling you to do.
Mhm.
But isn't like in music time sort of relative to what everyone else is doing?
That's what it said on the email. Right. Yeah, it is. Time is relative.
Okay, so then were you really keeping time then?
Yes, I was.
But
For all of us, not just for
if you-
them, but for all of us.
Yes, that's a very good observation. He's
Good.
keeping time for everybody in the room.
I felt like I was getting scolded.
You're getting what?
Scolded by the hour.
Yes!
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
good.
pretty aggressive,
Yeah.
right? Time can be,
Yeah,
time
yeah,
in music can be very aggressive if not treated the right way.
Instead of leading most people, you more so drag the rest of the group with you. It's like, we're going this way.
Mhm.
Yeah, yes, it grew.
And March.
March, yeah, I guess, yeah. Yeah. Is it conducive to the song? I mean, obviously, I'm over here bullying music, for sure, and banging. But is that kind of approach to the song? And it doesn't matter if you don't know what the song's about or whatever, it doesn't matter currently. But is it distracting what I'm doing? And the answer is absolutely, right? There's something wrong with this guy. Right? He's obviously not really a professor of music at City College, not really, So, time is relative. In music, time has some resilience to it, or some flexibility. We get to, as musicians, take this, which is what I was doing, and then we get to interpret that in a musical way, which I think is probably maybe the most important thing about music in the first place, is how we do that, okay? What decisions we make, okay? And what decisions we make on the spot, too, just in real time. Let me try it again.
Can I ask a question first?
Yes, sir, of course.
In respect to quantity, and quality, and they are, related to time, how do you make some kind of reciprocation or some kind of an adjustment, to the quantity and the quality, to have it somehow, intervene with time as an element by which the music produced is something, even though it may have categories different for each one of you, yet there is some kind of semblance that there is a time that has to do with quantity as well as quality.
Wow, what a great question. Yeah, the answer is 12. This is the question. Making those determinations on how much do we play, when do we play, what decisions we make, how will it affect the music, how will it affect the next idea from the singer, depending on what I do as a piano player, where I put the note, how much I play, how little. Same thing with the bass player. Who's going to take charge of the time, or do we need to worry about that? Can we just trust each other that the time will, the feeling of time, the underlying feeling of the forward momentum of the song will always be there? Do we have to worry about that necessarily? And can we just place notes where we want? That it's a very complicated question, and the answer is I think something that I guess we're still trying to figure out, or we'll always figure out, or maybe the whole point is to not worry about so much making that final determination. Getting there.
It's
just
a really tricky thing.
It is, yeah.
How many of you had children or friends or family who took piano lessons at a beginning level, right? And the first thing you do when you go to your piano lesson is they make you play scales, and you're supposed to do it to a metronome. Right. Do 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 do. All I mean, and singers do it too. We always do it to a metronome to keep this perfect time. Because what we have to do initially to start with is we have to internalize a time together, or this groove that we're coming up with. When I count 1, 2, they're already here with me. Now, when I do that to my beginning vocal jazz ensemble, this is something completely different to them than it is to us. This to them is, oh, that's really fast. Oh, I can't sing it that fast. What am I going to do? And then it falls apart, right? Or they don't sing the lyric the exact right way, so it comes back behind the beat, and then all of a sudden everyone's off from each other, which is where the conductor comes in and goes, here we go. Here it is. Everybody's here. If the group can't internalize that together, that takes years of practice. We make our students, I still practice with a metronome, so that I keep this internalized feel and movement. And I know, in this situation, I know that Greg is internalizing it the same way I am, based upon the knowledge that he has of his instrument. I trust that if I count it here, he's gonna be here. Has that happened every time? Not always, as you heard, right? Sometimes it kind of, and you can feel that uncomfortable moment of all the time is a mess. But again, remember that we're talking about time in this case. It has to be here, because there has to be a spot which to start. But eventually maybe we're not feeling this halfway through. And maybe as a singer, I'm like, I don't want to do this in time anymore. So I'm going to go, when autumn, and if they're intuitive enough, they're going to follow right where I'm going. It's a tricky thing, and jazz lends itself very well to this. A classical orchestra, for example, is not going to be able to do this in the way there's 85 people. But with a small combo like this and small ensembles, we're able to manipulate time in regards to tempo in a way that we might not necessarily get to in another type of
You're gonna modulate the tempo by the singer. You're the singer.
Theoretically.
Okay.
Theoretically, that's what's supposed to happen.
You answered my question beautifully. But I'm just thinking that as a singer, one person, and if you want to extend a note, like a lot of good singers do, they'll improvise.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be there to slow it down or pull back.
We're going to support.
Yes.
We're going to support the lead. Always.
So what we're told, when he did his clanking, did you see me shut down? Like I mean, we didn't even plan this, by the way. We had rehearsed that completely different. And then he starts doing that, and I'm just like, do your thing, dude. I've been on gigs where that's happened, where the piano player A isn't respectful to a singer. That happens a lot. Or I've heard flute players get destroyed in combos like this because they aren't considered to be a jazz instrument. There's a lot of things that can happen that way. And so you can sabotage a soloist by being this type of musician, for sure. Yeah.
Well, getting back to the earlier statement, I mean, a larger group kind of has to have that very strict time signature, because not everyone is going to be quite on time. In a much smaller group, like say a three-piece, it falls on you three to listen to each other and be like, okay, I can internalize. Even if you all slow down, you're going to slow down together. You're going to speed up together.
Keep in mind that this trio has only played one other time ever. So it's not like we sit around and practice this to get this perfect. Like, this is intuitive playing. Let's show them what we would do normally. Like like a swing tune, for example, and do the listening thing that we do sometimes. The falling leaves drift by my window. The falling leaves of red and gold. I see your lips, the summer kisses, the sunburned hands I used to hold. What's different?
Yes.
The bass is leading most of the tempo.
He's keeping it down. Yep.
If I danced, I could dance in the very time. So it's very comfortable. All of a sudden, for us, it's very secure. Okay, it's locked. It's that pocket that we talked about. Okay, the pocket is that groove, that is there. It's very clear to us. It makes us very comfortable. It frees Sarah to do any sort of phrasing that she wants to do. Okay? Caden's keeping the time. It also frees me up to do something that we call comping. In jazz, we call it comping, which is just short for accompanying, where I can play a little bit rhythmically, play a chord and get out of the way again. That's still, again, that idea of time, or sound and space, sound and silence. But the time, the pocket is always there. Even if Sarah kind of manipulates a little bit, we can maybe talk about how we might do that.
So when you manipulate, if I know that my time structure, specifically coming from my bass player, and usually you're the drummer. Now drummers can be a little dicey. If they're not a good one, it can destroy your entire world, but they're not practicing with that metronome. They need to practice with that metronome, drummers do. Their job is the timekeeper.
They have no dynamics. I mean, they have very
Well, they do.
minor.
No, good drummers have great dynamics, but the problem is that you have to have good time to have good dynamics. So you have to be able to internalize that beat. And then Caden's job within that combo setting is, if you watch a really good combo, the drummer and the bass player are like locked. They're making eye contact all the time because they are the timekeepers. That frees up Greg as the accompaniment to noodle around and have a little more fun with what he's playing. So he's not stuck to the chords on the page. Now the problem is, if you have a vocalist that can't navigate these changes or this type of tonality really well, you can have a big problem, which then locks your combo into having to play like he did the first time, because your soloist can't sing it.
So is that why some unplugged versions just don't work?
Yes. Like you hear them and you go, there's something really wrong with this, and I don't know why. It's typically because that soloist is not comfortable enough with the music itself. And odds are probably haven't done a ton of rehearsing or don't know their musicians very well. So a nice piano player like Greg, and he's done this for my students who aren't very confident, he will help them. He will play the melody for them. But there are a lot of pianists who will do what he did that first time and just go, fine, clank, 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 and you're just,
You're done.
see you later. There might have been a jury in college that happened to me that way. Anyway, so you have to, as me as the soloist, like I really need to know what I'm doing. And if I can't come in with a sense of authority, like, hey, this is where I want it, I'm relying on people to make me sound good, and that's not fair to them. So if I don't know my changes very well, I certainly can't manipulate what I'm doing to make it interesting for them. So what I did that time, instead of singing the falling leaves 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, I'm doing what we call back phrasing. How many of you listen to Frank Sinatra? He's the king of back phrasing. Right? So I'm going to do a really crazy example of back phrasing. So back phrasing is taking the beat, dun, 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 2, 3, bum, bum. Instead of doing like that, you go 1, 2, please. Drift by my window, and finally find my way back to where we are in the song. So let's do start it right there.
So this requires the rhythm section to stay the course. Okay, now in order for this to work, we have to be on the beat. You'll imagine a group of runners on a track and race, and Caden and I will represent the folks that are in the front of the pack, okay, on this Olympic race, right? And Sarah will be the runner who has chosen to sort of back off and be towards the back of the pack or even behind.
The falling leaves drift by my window. The falling leaves of red and gold. I see your lips. The summer kisses, the sunburned hands I used to hold. Since you went,
It's a little bit like, okay, we get it.
The little goes a long way.
This is when we institute the two-drink minimum.
Right. It's really reminiscent of like Lenny the Lounge Lizard, you know, like, hey.
But Frank Sinatra was like the guy that did this. The rumor is that he did it because he always forgot the words. Ella Fitzgerald did it a lot too.
Yeah.
And it was actually like, oh, I'm trying to get the words, trying to get the words, trying to get the words. Oh, they're there. It's where it started.
If you got any notes left over, you can just sing them on the way home.
Exactly. It's actually really fun to do, and it's hard. Like, it's really hard. I have to think really hard. Like, all right.
Yeah.
Because some notes work in those chords, and sometimes they don't, and do you want them to not work? Because what it does is it builds tension. And it was fun to watch you as an audience, because you didn't look concerned necessarily, but there was a few times where I would hang on to one and like, Nate over here is like,
Come on!
and then when you land in, it's like, oh, she knows where she's at. There's nothing more uncomfortable, I don't think, than a soloist who doesn't know where they are in those changes. And you can tell the difference between I have no idea where I'm at and I'm doing that on purpose. And there is, and you don't know why it makes a difference, but it makes a difference. There's also not the scared look of like.
It really seemed like the syncopation was really the secret to having your voice really work this time. Okay, so the syncopation, you know, like Dave Brubeck, you know, and many others who really achieved it, you know, in such an enormous way, that's just what you got through doing there. And then holding the notes as you did, like Frank Sinatra does. Why, I mean, it creates not just tension, but it also is a certain kind of expectation. You know, what are you going to do with this in an analytic way to really have it come back to where we would normally expect time to be registered in our brains? Is that right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's a really fun concept, and it's really fun to teach my students this concept of, hey, stretch it out. What's your hurt? Calm down. Yeah.
I have a question on tempo.
Yeah.
I have children that they were in the orchestra with the junior high school band, and my son's a drummer. And a drummer tends to start with a certain tempo, a certain beat. And most of the time, I've found that at the end of the composition, they're going faster. Is that usually the
That's
case?
the danger, yeah. Rushing a
That's one of
tempo.
them.
Right.
Rushing a tempo is really,
Rarely do they slow down.
Exactly.
They seem to speed up.
You know what it is?
I just wonder if that's common.
it's heart rate.
Yeah.
I tell my students all the time, take a breath. Don't count off your song at the rate that your heart is going, because you can't sustain it. My piano players, their hands can't go that fast. So it is taking a, my brother was a drummer. And it was the same thing. He had really bad rushing problems. Like he would rush. One of our really good friends is a drummer. He rushes like crazy, and it's always like, shut up. Here's a metronome. And that's why we have them practice with the metronome. And drummers have it rough. They have so many things that they have to do. Like I could never do it. I mean, I'd like to make fun of them, but I would never be able to do it.
Then we have other friends who are drummers who
Are perfect.
Who right, their time is impeccable, and they almost never pull rush or drag in an appropriate way. But they also, at the same time that their time is so impeccable, they are can be very resilient with their timekeeping, depending on what's going on with the band. So they become the soloist almost, or the keyboard player, the bass player. They're all of those musicians in one person, because they're reacting and they're prodding and pushing and backing off and doing whatever they want to do, or commenting rhythmically on what somebody just played and that sort of thing. So they become part of the conversation rather than just as a timekeeper. And those folks we love playing with, because now we have 4 musicians on the stand instead of 3 and a drummer.
Right.
Yeah.
So this gentleman mentioned our brains and how our brains come into play with this. And don't different people's brains interpret the timing differently, which is why we sometimes like a song and sometimes don't, or like band or don't.
Absolutely.
And that's also what makes it, I guess, interesting.
That's what's so difficult often about a process like this, is that Caden's experience with jazz is very young and very new, and this is why he's a beast and why we're not going to pass him. he stays forever. Caden just learned how to play the bass last summer.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you know, because that's just, you know, yeah.
Right.
The bass, this is the bass.
Whatever.
We were like, okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So his experience with jazz is very different than ours. Clearly, he's listening like a maniac. He's also immersed himself in this genre. So he's listened and is listening to jazz musicians who are the best all of the time to absorb this type of feel. Greg's been playing longer than I have and is a much better piano player than I'll ever be. And when I showed up to Sierra in 2007, and we played our first gig together, it was like, oh yeah, all right, cool, we're fine. And then when we added Caden into the mix, he has the same type of mentality of, we take this seriously, here's where my pocket is, are you with me? Okay, here we go. And I know they're with me, and we only had to do that one time. I've had bass players where I'll do this, and they start, and I'm like, oh man, we're sunk. They're not intuitive, they don't listen. And as you saw with Greg's example, it only takes one to make it a really, to be a dictator and take this concept of a movable time where we can interpret together and kind of destroy it. So.
I think talking about interpretation and the brain and what you both mentioned, I think it was interesting because for me, when you guys were playing it in like completely straight time the first time, in my head I tried to reimagine it about how, you know, like it would sound better. I tried, like, you know, I was like, okay, well, I place myself in a nightclub and this is how she would be singing it and this is how it would be played.
Right.
And then it was also interesting when you were doing the back phrasing because then my brain was anticipating what you would do next.
Okay. Let's do the ballad.
Okay.
We're gonna take you completely out of time now. Where Greg and I are going to do this song with no time. This is very hard. It's actually really hard. The falling leaves drift by my window. The falling leaves of red and gold. I see your lips. The summer kisses. The sunburned hands I used to hold. Since you went away, the days grow long, and soon I'll hear old winter's song. But I miss you most of all. My darling, when autumn leaves start to fall.
It's really hard.
It's really hard.
By the way, that one little moment, I was just trying to figure out the next one.
I know. What did you see? Or hear?
It was really funny.
In the beginning, you really wanted to shy away from those lows, like,
Trying to set some kind of mood.
Yeah.
yeah. It was funny because I was watching her and she's like,
Well, this is interesting because what you're talking about is visual. You're watching this and we're having a great time. We're trying to, I don't know what we're doing, psych each other out. We're just trying to make something happen, right? But if you would have heard that on a recording,
It was very abstract.
It's very
It's
abstract.
very abstract.
Yeah.
It's almost like groovy and during the time of the Braves and things.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was very much a back and
It's sort
forth,
of
like, I mean,
more
she would
morbidity.
sing and then you would kind of accompany that with the piano and then it would be back and forth, back
Yeah.
and forth.
Did you notice that there were often times I was waiting for him to play a chord?
Yes.
And there's a couple of reasons for that. This is a difficult melody to navigate. It's chromatic, which means it's just like it's hard. So there are times that I need a chord to make sure that I'm heading in the right direction. I mean, I know this song really well, so I probably could have got away with it, but there were times too that I anticipated it and I wanted to go first. And I'm the boss of it in this situation. And it is back and forth, but I'm the boss of it.
Isn't it easier to hear it though, because we are familiar with the timing and we do know the words, than if it was a brand new song with brand new words and brand new melody, because then we wouldn't know what the timing was supposed to be and it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, it's possible.
I think that's an interesting point, because people are still always going back in their own minds to what their vision of the
Yeah.
song.
I thought what you just did was far, far more interesting and really nice to hear than your very first version of it.
Mhm.
Although if somebody asked me to dance, I would have chosen your first version of it because there was nothing I could do.
Absolutely.
Or you could dance to
Well, my
this.
daughter might be able to improv it, but not me. I'm down to improv it.
I kind of heard that song as a conversation. You were singing, doing a beautiful job of it. He'd pause and he would respond. He would talk back to you. Then he would sing some more and he would, like you're talking.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. That's really what.
That's what we were going for.
That's what that's what we're always really going for. You know, when you hear a group of musicians playing, the goal in which, and it's not always easy, you know, in an art form that it really is all about communication, it doesn't always happen like Sarah's mentioned. So when you get that sense that we're, you know, kind of having a conversation or collaborating or something, that's a pretty high level of playing, and what we expect, you know, when we go hear music and when we hang with people who play music, that's what our expectation is. You know, is that we want to, like Katie, who's intuitive and listening and paying attention, who's not afraid to change and to adjust and to, you know, again, back to what we said about trusting and knowing that we'll get there. It's gonna happen. We're gonna resolve. The tension is gonna resolve. Everything's gonna be okay. Right? That's the best sort of experiences.
So as far as like time goes with that, there's no tempo. So by definition of our pocket, it doesn't really fit. But it's definitely a viable way of producing music in a way that's not stereotypical. So how does time work in that respect? Well, there isn't time, but there is still some time, right? Did you catch that? Like he would still go gonna in time, and then we'd come back out. And it's this waltz really of how can we make this sound something new, yet not go so far away that your audience has no idea what's going on, which is where free jazz heads, right? Free jazz is just like, let's go, everybody play something, ready, go. So it's interesting. Question for you, were you uncomfortable at all during that section?
Yeah, it seems to me it has this psychological effect, okay, almost between morbidity on the one side, because his playing seemed to contrast too strongly with what the words were, but also the tone of your voice, also the elevation and quantity and quality of your voice. They were so matched that it seems to me that a psychological effect could very well be that somebody could maybe end up with a heartbeat of 100, you know, as opposed to maybe 60. You know what I mean? There is some kind of psychological thing that's happening there in the psyche, and I mean, I was trying to figure out what's going on, you know, in my brain to be able to feel that, and I kept thinking, why is he, okay, going to the opposite scale, okay, of what you are producing in your sound, okay, and why are you then going to the opposite from what he's doing? I mean, it just seemed like to me morbidity over here, and how over here on your voice, the expectation of something that was going to be melodious and somehow answer the need to satisfy the morbidity that was coming out of that piano.
I dig it.
I mean, is that,
We're gonna have people sign waivers of liability next time. Just a little bit too of, we still, in all those different variations, we still were dealing with, you know, harmony and melody and things like this, and we never really left that realm. There's
Correct.
no dissonant notes in there, there's no unresolved chords or unresolved time or something like that, so we still were kept comfortable, because it still was within our
We're still in the room, the
framework.
form is
Right.
still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you have time like that, you have to, well, he can kind of do whatever he wants. He's got to stick with what's as similar to the page as possible, because
yeah,
there has to be some harmonic unity between the two of them. When we ask the rest of the rhythm section to disappear and we go on a ballad like that, he's on his own journey,
Yeah.
and we are, you know, you saw me turn in, like, okay, what are we doing? Where are we going? And then I have to make the choice, like you said, am I gonna follow that dark path, or am I gonna purposely make it contrasting? Which is what my choice was, to stay high, as he kept doing that. I actually like this song a little more morbid, because it's a melancholic song, so it like the text is very melancholic, but the melody isn't. So the interpretation of that dark, sinister thing is not too abstract for this tune, but it is in the way that we would have to play it together. If we decided that we wanted to do it with that harmonic progression, we would have to all sit down and write it all out, so that we could all do it at the same time. Unless, you know, Caden was Ray Brown or something. But you're not. Soon.
As a drummer and a bassist, I did find it kind of jarring, because I would find the tempo, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna be the tempo, and it's gone.
You're welcome.
Did you want to close with the Marine Sam?
Sure, do you want to hear any more music? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've noticed when making music with other musicians, at first it's like trying to talk to somebody in a different language. If it's the first time I've ever made music with this person, it's like, it's hard. But the more we do it, like it happens over the next month, we play more, it becomes easier. It's like it becomes easier to understand each other. Sure. Is that something that kind of goes away as you gain more experience? Like you guys said, this is only the second time you guys have played together. You can come in, because you guys have a lot of knowledge in music. You can come in and kind of just come together and click a lot more easier. And then somebody who might not have as much power, do you guys run into that too, where it's kind of like you have to make music with each other for a little bit to?
Well, when Greg and I first started playing together back in 7 years ago or so, it was fun. We were great, but we didn't really know each other personally well enough to know. Like I can pretty much now, after 7 years of doing these types of things, kind of know where he's gonna go, and vice versa. Like we do this enough that he's like, oh, she's gonna go here next, because I have my things that I do. So yes, it does get easier the more you do it with the same person. Let's talk about like Dave Brubeck's group. Like he and Paul Desmond were. They're just incredible. The way that their communication was, the more they played, the cooler and cooler it got. It will absolutely continue to build the more you play with a group of people. But again, bringing Caden in, Caden's not normally the bass player we play with. But in all honesty, he's far more intuitive than the other bass player. Far more intuitive. Like I feel like we've been playing with him far longer than we ever had with the other bass player. And that's a testament to his musicality. That's not only inherent, but his dedication to his craft. So. He's still flying. All right, so this tune is called Moon and Sand. It's a bossa nova. It's a Latin tune. The time feel changes on this. We've been doing swinging 80 stuff. This is, I'm going to be a little bit more on top of the tempo. Well, kind of. A bossa nova is a little more rhythmic, so that tempo, that time, that groove is a little more important for all of us to stay in, because it's stylistically it's accurate. So. Can you take a solo on that?
Yeah, sure.
One, two, one, two. Deep is the midnight sea. Warm is the fragrant land. Sweet are your lips to me. Oh, when shall we meet again? When the night has left us, will the spell remain? Though waves invade the shore, and though we may kiss no more, night is at our command. Moon and sand and the magic of deep is the midnight sea. Warm is the fragrant land. Sweet are your lips to me, and soft as the moon and sand. Oh, when shall we meet again? When the night has left us, will the spell remain? Though waves invade the shore, though we may kiss no more, night is at our command. Moon and sand and the magic of love.
any more questions about time and music now?
We all do.
Yeah,
We
so do we.
all do.
Just did nothing but like go, oh, man.
Thank you for provoking us. Absolutely marvelous. Thank you all for coming very, very much. And what can I say? That was a great way to do it.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's that very corner.